In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the harmonic balancer on this Honda Civic. It's located on the side of your engine. We'll access it through the passenger side fender well. Let's get started. Looking on the passenger side of your engine, you'll see the serpentine belt with the tensioner. This right here is where you can stick a serpentine belt tool right down here, or if you have a wrench that fits, that's good too. There we go. You want to make sure that however you put it on, you have space to go counterclockwise as you're looking at the engine from the side. Keep constant pressure on it. This is a hydraulic tensioner, and because it's not spring-loaded, it just needs constant pressure to release. Pull the belt off once you've gotten enough slack in it, and then slowly let go of it. It should stop right here. Let's pull the socket off and the tool. There we go. And now you can remove your belt, or you could just let it hang here, but I prefer to remove it so that it's completely out of my way. Now take a note of how the belt is routed. I will provide you with a diagram at the end so you can put it back easily, but it's always good to just take a quick glance at it. To have much better access to this, we're going to have to remove the passenger side front wheel, so raise and support the vehicle safely and take off all 5 of your lug nuts with a 19mm socket. Remove the wheel. Remove this shield by popping off the 2 push clips that hold it on. Pull it down. Now these bolts are known to be very difficult to remove. I will start by using my air impact just on the bolt without holding anything. Sometimes that actually does the trick, but this is a hex cutout for a reason. That is because there is a special tool that fits right in here, and it helps you hold the crank and allows you to put pressure on this bolt to remove it without spinning the engine. We might have to use it, but first I'm just going to put my impact on this and see if that does the trick. Now if you don't have an impact, you will need this tool so that you can use a breaker bar. All right, so I don't want to continue spinning this more than I already did. So I'm going to put my breaker bar on it with this tool, spin it back to basically where it was, so I can put it in its neutral position on the timing chain. I don't want to put pressure on the wrong side. I'm going to hold it like this and try again with this time a slightly more powerful air impact. All right. Well, that did the trick. Another thing you could do is get yourself a weighted socket. So this is a regular impact socket. A weighted socket is much, much thicker, will transfer the impacts a lot more through into the bolt and is much more likely to get this off. They are actually made on purpose for bolts like this. Now once you've gotten that bolt out, this is not pressed on, it's just splined, so it should pull right off. There it is. Okay, so before I move forward, this is very important here. Because this happened, I'm going to take a magnet, very gently try to pull this pin off of here, and I definitely do not want this to fall inside the engine. If this falls inside your engine, you're going to have to remove the oil pan to pick it up. So this is a little keyway that holds the crank, or helps hold the crank onto the harmonic balancer better. This usually stays in the crank. This is also a great time to replace your front main seal or your crank seal, whatever you want to call it, because it's right here out in the open. Now here's the way I'm going to do this. I'm going to put the harmonic balancer on. I'm going to press it on. There we go. Press it on all the way. And now I'm going to put this keyway in. Now I'm going to put this keyway in. If it doesn't go in, you probably have it sideways. It is cut to only fit in one way. Press this on until it's flush with the crank. All right, that's bottomed out. Next, I will spray the tiniest amount of brake parts cleaner on the threads inside of the crank, and then take compressed air and blow it all out. Next, I'm going to do the same thing to the bolt, both on the threads and up here on the washer. If you don't have access to compressed air, you could just wait for it to air dry. It's basically the same thing, just takes a little longer. Now what I need to do is get a little bit of engine oil and put it on the threads of the bolt, very lightly. I have it on my glove here. You don't need a lot. You just need to lightly coat them, especially the ones down here at the beginning, because the oil will make its way in or up the threads as you thread it in. Another area to put oil on is right where the washer makes contact with the head of the bolt. Just like that. Give it a couple turns so that when you tighten this up, the washer doesn't create too much extra friction. The oil will basically act as a lubricant to prevent that from happening. Now take the freshly lubricated bolt and thread it into the crank. Make sure it goes on nice and smooth so that it doesn't cross thread, of course. Don't put it on with a power tool. And bottom it out by hand. You should be able to do that. If you aren't able to do that, that means the harmonic balancer is not fully seated. This just bottomed out, so let's tighten it up now. At this point, if you are reusing the bolt, you're going to torque it to 51 foot-pounds and an additional 90 degrees. If you are using a new bolt, you're going to torque it to 130 foot-pounds. Loosen it until you can spin it with your fingers, then torque it to 51 foot-pounds, then an additional 90 degrees. Since I am reusing my bolt, I'm going to go with 51 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. It is not recommended to use a power tool to tighten this. Just use a torque wrench. If you are unable to, just do your best to get it nice and tight. Okay, if you're able to prop this holder with the pry bar between the control arm and the subframe, that's ideal. 51 foot-pounds, here we go. All right, now that's 51, and because I'm reusing the bolt, I do not need to loosen it. I'm just going to add 90 degrees to this. I have a torque wrench that reads degrees, so I'm just going to go with that, but 90 degrees is a quarter of a turn, so mark your bolt or just eyeball it if you don't have a digital torque wrench. All right, now that is tight. Remove your holder tool. Since I'm using a digital torque wrench, it tells me the final torque number in foot-pounds, and just so you have an idea of how tight this ended up being, came out to 224 foot-pounds. It's time to put the belt back on, and since I removed mine, I'm going to start down here. There are 3 options for this vehicle. You'll see all 3 on the screen, but it will be based on whether you have AC or not, a long belt or a short belt, and if you have electronic power steering, the power steering pump pulley will actually just be an idler pulley. All right, so I have it in place other than the alternator from down here, which is great. I'm going to try to put some tension on it. I'm going to try to extend it manually so I can assure that everything is actually in position. Back up top, grab onto the belt, make sure it hasn't fallen off of the pulleys down there, and then we're gonna have to release tension, slip it over the alternator. Same way, 19mm socket on that stud, or on the cutout, and keep pushing. There we go. Now it did fall off the AC compressor, so I have to get down there and slide it back on. There we go. All right, there we have it. It is perfectly on all the pulleys. Double check it because you don't want it to be off. If it's off just one rib on any of the pulleys, not only can it fall off, but it can damage a lot of things while it's flying off of there with the engine running. Let's put this shield back, make sure it all lines up, and lock it in with the 2 push clips. Put the wheel back on, reinstall all 5 lug nuts, bottom them out in a cross pattern, and also in a cross pattern, that way the wheel can seat evenly. Torque them to 79 foot-pounds. .79 foot-pounds, like I mentioned earlier. Double check them. Now run the engine, make sure everything is good, and there you have it. Job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.